Meet Pogranichnik, a Liberia operator with a supple Russian accent and outstanding tactical acumen. But what's the deal with him being a Reconvener? And what's with all them dudes? Well, I'll give you all those answers and more as I answer the question, who was Pogranichnik actually? Real quick, all the names I'm gonna say in this video are very European. I needed my chat to give me a crash course on how to pronounce his name, so just know I'm gonna blunder the rest. Anyways, let's go over what a Reconvener even is. It's a bit more complicated than this, but he's basically a unique individual clone of his original self from the OG Arknights, possessing many of his old memories and abilities. Meet Hellagur, a famous war veteran known by some as the General. Now, Hellagur's backstory is closely intertwined with the nation that he served, Ursus, the Russian equivalent of Terra. That's why I think this video is a great chance to expand a bit on the world building of Arknights for our new Endfield friends. Without it, we'll be missing a lot of the why for Hellagur's story. This may be a bit overwhelming, which is why I recommend thinking about it in the same way I do. Every nation in Terra has its own analogous real-world equivalent, with story beats that somewhat line up with their history. For example, the nation of Victoria is based on the British Empire during the Victorian era, and they lose what's called the Colombian Revolutionary War, which is analogous to the American Revolutionary War in our history, as the Terra nation of Colombia equates to a combination of our USA and Canada. Now back to Hellagur. In his younger days, he was a soldier of the Ursus Empire, again based on the Russian Empire, a nation of extreme winters, and some of the worst treatment of the infected in Terra. For my anime-only watchers, this is the nation where Tallulah had her rise to power, and her generational crash-out. Ursus is extremely xenophobic of other Terra nations, and is highly militaristic, so much so that they had a policy of military expansionism, utilizing their military might by invading their many neighbors, such as them invading the Polish equivalent nation of Kazimierz 10 times. There are 10 Ursus-Kazimierz wars within the span of like 50 years. And with that policy for plundering for resources, Ursus joins the history-altering War of Four Nations, where Hellagur first displayed his talents. The records for this war are actually fairly detailed. If you're interested, take a look at the wiki page. It describes several battles, as well as the political motivations for each nation. But for this video, we'll stick to the basics, starting with the participants. As with the namesake of the War of Four Nations, there are 4 major players. The first one is the nation of Gaul. Gaul is based off of a combination of the First French Empire, as well as the Romans. It is the dominating superpower of Terra. Under the rule of Emperor Corsica I, the Gaulish military was revolutionized with superior originium-based technology and strategic ingenuity. Gaul was essentially the capital of Terra for centuries, and against Gaul was a shaky alliance of 3 other nations. The first being Ursus, which we've already talked about. The second is Victoria. In retaliation for Gaulish meddling in the Colombian Revolutionary War, they've deployed their elite Steam Knights in an effort to save face after that humiliation. The third is Lithuania, which is based on the Germanic nations. If you recall my Ardelia video, this is the homeland of Adele and her parents. Ruled by the infamous Witch King, he decimated the battlefield with otherworldly originium arts, capable of decimating the entire Gaulish warship fleet in one fell swoop. The War of Four Nations was a fierce series of fighting among multiple highly mobile battlefields, which eventually led to the decisive finale, the Battle of the Four Emperors. This battle is actually referenced in Endfield as a special achievement. You just have to kick 4 originium slugs off a cliff. On October 17th, 1031, the Battle of the Four Emperors officially began. All 4 ruling sovereigns were present, but Gaul took the initiative with Marshal Emmanuel de Liberi's fleet's preemptive attack, only to be intercepted by the Victorian Duke of Wellington's forces. Corsica I and his Grande Armée took on the main force of Victoria's battleships and Lithuania's mobile spires head-on. Meanwhile, Ursine troops advanced from the north. Marshal Jean-François Morin of Gaul took the brunt of Emperor Ivan Yevgenyevich's main force, and at the fore was a young Hellagur. With practiced efficiency and genius tactical ability, he led his unit to crush Gaul resistance. It was here that he first distinguished himself from the rest, eventually giving him the credibility to rise to general. At his side was his blood brother, Uldracus T, otherwise known as Patriot. If you recall the prologue of Endfield, many believe that this statue was actually him, the last pure-blooded Wendigo of the Sarkaz, a supremely powerful Ursine Patriot that also gained distinction. The battle ends with the death of Corsica I and his family, and the entire nation of Gaul is dissolved, with the victors picking apart the nation's remnants like vultures. It was a war so significant that it created the political conditions that led to the main story of the original Arknights. Victoria's inability to properly utilize the Gaulish spoils leads to a coup d'etat, and the public execution of the Aslan king Alistair II, setting the stage for the future rise of Vina Victoria and the Exemplars, the siege herself. Litania suffered major losses in the opening year of the war, leaving the Witch King's position vulnerable, leading to the rise in power of the twin empresses in his wake. And as for Ursus, it creates the conditions for the events that shape Hellagur into the person that Pogranichnik knows him as. The Ursus military boomed with the surplus, severely weakening the government structure. With the ascension of the new Emperor Vladimir Ivanovich, the previous emperor's son, a new era of Ursine dominance began. The new sovereign is often described as the soul of Ursus incarnate. He was an ambitious and wise ruler, focusing on merit rather than bloodline. While this angered the conservative old guard, Emperor Vladimir took it a step further by being openly tolerant of non-Ursine races, adding the outstanding among them to the army, earning their undying loyalty, such as with Patriot. Ursus expansionism accelerated in this time period, with Emperor Vladimir starting and winning the 9th and 10th Ursus Kazimierz Wars, in which Hellagur once again distinguished himself among his peers, after which he was hailed as a war hero. But Ursus' dominance didn't last forever, and it was the end of this golden age that set the tone for the rest of Hellagur's life. It can be said that Hellagur's trauma stemmed from two major betrayals. The first occurs during the latter years of Emperor Vladimir's rule. The year is 1072. The consequences of decades of expansionism are very readily apparent, with military corruption in Ursus' annexed territories. Emperor Vladimir himself is severely ill, but that doesn't stop Ursus from moving forward. The Blood Peak Campaign, an invasion of Higashi, a nation based on real-world Japan. One of Hellagur's skins is actually his uniform during it. Looks a bit familiar, doesn't it? Ursus saw Higashi as an easy target. It was fresh off of a civil war, with the country divided in two, but what should have been a quick victory turned into a bloody quagmire. The two halves of Higashi fought together with sheer dogged resistance. Rampant military corruption led to mass confusion among the Ursus forces. One such case is an army receiving the order to both retreat and advance at the same time. Supply lines were cut off, and Ursus couldn't get an edge. Hellagur's army fights in the front lines, his blood brothers by his side, but Emperor Vladimir's tolerance backfires in a colossal way. One of Hellagur's lifetime friends turns out to be a traitor, a double agent that was actually the commander of the Higashinese army. The full details of what happens isn't known, only that this friend dies in front of Hellagur's eyes, mentally crushing him. Hellagur opens his deceased friend's pocket watch, finding the photo of a strange infected girl. Said girl walks past the dead body, completely calm, as if the war exhausted all of her emotions. Hellagur realizes that this probably wasn't the first time that the girl has been entrusted to someone. She draws a Higashi's sword, pointing it towards Hellagur, but he doesn't move. She silently moves forward, only to sheath it in the scabbard at his hip. This sword became Hellagur's main weapon from then on, using it to protect Neon, the girl that his dead friend had entrusted him with. And sometime during all of this, Hellagur becomes infected. Despite Emperor Vladimir's tolerance of non-Ursine races, this was never extended to the infected. Even under his rule, Ursus remained a hellhole for any infected unfortunate enough to live in it. And this only became more intense after Emperor Vladimir's death. After the failure that was the invasion of Higashi, the army broke down into political conflicts between nobles, beginning the Great Rebellion in 1074. This was a dark period in Ursus history, with persecution against the infected and intellectuals. Even Patriot's son was executed in the struggle, after which he turns his back on Ursus, followed by his squad of loyal Ursus shield-bearers, eventually becoming a founding member of Reunion. And, disillusioned with the country he loved, Hellagur also leaves the army. He goes to a black market clinic, desperate for treatment for Neon, and in his operator file is this exchange. "What are you willing to lose to heal her?" "Everything but her. I want your dignity, sir. Everything the Ursus Empire took from us. We're gonna peel off your body." "I'm not sure my body has any dignity left." "It does, sir. Welcome. You are now one of us." This black market clinic is known as a Zazel, an underground organization dedicated to caring for the infected of Ursus. They are highly advanced, comparable even to Rhodes Island. Warfarin is stated to be extremely interested in their technology. However, it's here where Hellagur experiences the second traumatic betrayal. Again, the details are sparse, but the gist of it is that his closest friend and Neon herself both conspire a betrayal against Hellagur. In order to protect the patience of Azazel, Hellagur is forced to kill him, and bitterly forgives his adopted daughter in order to continue keeping his promise with his old Higashinese friend. Constantly a victim of betrayals, alienated by his country, and the emperor he glorified dead, Hellagur had nothing. Nothing but regrets, Azazel, and Neon. When the main plot of Arknights occurs, the city that Azazel is located in is abandoned by Ursus. Reunion moves in, ravaging both the city and the clinic. This persuades Hellagur to cut a deal with Rhodes Island for the treatment of himself, Neon, and all the other patients, folding Azazel into their organization. Before leaving the city, Hellagur alone approaches the leader of Reunion in the area, Patriot, his old blood brother. Patriot offers to punish the ones that destroyed the clinic, and asks Hellagur to join Reunion, but he refuses. Hellagur says, Ursus no longer has anything for me. Time has run its course. I no longer feel anything for the country what I once did. The two have taken opposite paths to protect the infected. Patriot will charge forward, embroiled in war, and fight for infected rights with Reunion. Hellagur will defend the infected with Rhodes Island, cutting down those that try to hurt them. Two different methods, but the same goal. They part amicably, both promising to have their daughters one day meet. From here on out, Hellagur doesn't really do anything major after joining Rhodes Island. He plays the part of bodyguard for the Doctor for a little bit in Siesta, and completely mogs Chiljug during the Dungeon Meshi collab, but that's pretty much it, and you know the rest. Pogranichnik wakes up as a Reconvener on Talos 2. He doesn't see himself as Hellagur, but instead considers Hellagur more of a mentor figure. He joins the Order of Steel Oath in the north, molding the soldiers there. He trains his unit to be the same caliber as the old Ursus shield guards that Hellagur and Patriot once led. He has a nostalgic connection with the UWST, and he fights on the front lines against Angoloi incursions. And that's pretty much it. Not much has happened yet to Pogranichnik story-wise, but it is sure to develop further when the Administrator eventually journeys to the north. Sorry about the long history lesson. I just thought that this would be a decent launching point for Arknights world building, as the history was fairly tied in with Hellagur's motivations. Anyways, yeah, that's all. See y'all next time.